Hi, this is Georgia Stathis with a little insight on Saturn in Aries, which is going to go retrograde on July 26th. I want to talk a little bit about Saturn in Aries because Saturn's the last planet we can see with our eyes, and it's what we call our reality structure, if you will. And every 29 and a half years, Saturn comes back to the same spot in the zodiac. And then the same kinds of things happen to you in your life, but hopefully you've matured because the hope and the blessing of Saturn is as you mature that you become wiser. So every time Saturn returns to the same position in your chart, every 29 and a half years is where you have the opportunity to climb to the next step of what you started doing that 29 and a half years ago. Saturn went into 0 degrees of Aries in February of 2026. It was briefly there in the summer of 25, but then it came back permanently to stay for 2.5 years. And it is in Aries. And what is Aries ruled by? What archetype? Mars, the god of war, the god of motivation, the god of adventure, the god of pioneering ideas, the god of bravery and heroics, the god of destruction and wounding and killing, because every single archetypal planet has two sides. So, what does that mean? And in fact, if you want to do a little history or a little tracking of your life, if you've been around that long, go back to 96, 97, 98, roughly, when Saturn was last in Aries, or go back to the mid 60s when Saturn was in Aries, because every time Saturn goes into Aries, you, the individual, or you, the company or the country, has to deal with its Mars. Wherever the Mars is placed in the natal chart, what house that Mars rules, which would be Aries, and in the old days it was Scorpio, but we'll look at Aries for now, and how functional it is, and how dysfunctional it is, and how to make it better without destroying the good parts of it in your chart. So wherever Mars is in the horoscope, there is a lot of motivation, there's a lot of possible wounding, there's a lot of motivation that comes out of wounding. Out of wounding come ideas, pioneering ideas. And whatever house Mars rules, which is Aries, look at that house to incorporate it, because that is the sign. The sign that Mars rules in your chart is Aries. And where is Aries in your chart? Because that area of your chart is where you're going to really take a hard look in the next 2.5 years as Saturn's going through Aries to figure out what parts of this adventure that I've been on do I want to expand upon, but also what parts of the adventure that I've been on, that I've done and I've liked, and maybe I haven't liked, do I need to discard to climb to the place that I feel best to be at this point in my life? There was a wonderful astrologer. She was one of my best teachers. Wendy Ashley was an astromythologist living up in Portland, Maine. We lost her a few years ago, which is so sad. But she had studied with Charles Ponce, who worked with Carl Jung. And I took a course from her 30 years ago, maybe 25. I don't know when it was. It was a long time ago, where she started to incorporate the mythological archetypes into the chart. And that, for me, completely changed my life, because then suddenly these drawings, these glyphs on this page came to life, because suddenly I had the story. And for me, it was very fortunate because my background is Greek, and we went to Greek school and we read Greek mythology. And I mean, I always loved it since I was a little kid. Most kids like the mythologies and the cultures. That's why Marvel Comics does so well. It's all mythology, right? And so one of the things that Wendy taught us about people who have a strong Mars, or if Mars is really hitting your chart, especially in a progression or in a much more stressful way, that many times the pathway is that there has to be some sort of severing and being lashed or cut away from the existing clan. Now, the clan can be a family, it can be a town, it can be a place you've lived, it could be friends that have become like a clan, it can be a professional organization that's been your clan. Clan and community are the same thing. But something happens, and it's such a severe wound or such a severe push that it is when you have to come to a fork in the road and make a judgment about, do I want to stay here Or is there something that is more in line with my Mars, my direction, my quest that I'm not going to find here? Even though I love here, or even though this is painful, I feel loyal to this here, but that my soul, my spirit is calling me and saying, look, you've done this, you've done this, you've done this. Why shouldn't you if you're not going to hurt anybody? And sometimes when we leave people, we are hurting them, but sometimes leaving people, if the people, and I also myself have been left, are taking responsibility for their part in the break in the relationship. And that's part of the beginning of Saturn and only the first few degrees of Aries, because it will only go out to about 14 degrees on the 26th of July. And it will go backwards. The planets don't really do that, but they look like it. It'll go retrograde all the way until it goes direct on December 10th of 2026, when it goes direct at 7, almost 8 degrees of Aries. So, and the first 10 degrees of a sign is always the same as the sign in terms of decans, if you know astrology. So this is about, okay, what house does Saturn rule in your chart? Okay, there's something that I've been trying to do that's brand new, because Saturn right now is in Aries. And so where is Saturn moving through your chart in Aries? Because that's the area that you have to climb through. But the retrograde periods, which I do like a lot, are when you have the opportunity to go back. In this case, since Saturn entered since Saturn entered Aries on February 13th, it started then, it goes all the way to July 26th. From that period of time, that 5 or 6 months, there's been a new journey here for your Saturn in Aries. Now, if you want to really track yourself, if you're old enough, go back to the last time Saturn was in Aries at this place in your chart. What was going on then that's very similar to what's going on now? Or if you're older than that, and the last time Saturn was in Aries in the middle to late 60s, I think it was, what was going on in your life then that's related to what happened around 96, that's also related to what's happening now? Obviously, it's not going to be the same thing, but there's going to be a similar thread in there that got dropped somewhere along the road so that you can take this road called life. And it's back. And so there's an opportunity here to, this time versus all those other times, because Saturn didn't align with Neptune earlier this year, to maybe incorporate more seamlessly, maybe because we have more tools now, we have more access, we have obviously technical access, we have AI, which is, I think, a great help, and it's also going to be a great mystery and sometimes causes great problems. Putting structure to visions that you might have had difficulty putting structure to in the past. And that's the thing that I find to be quite beautiful with this Saturn, with Neptune, both in Aries, first half of the year, putting our toe in the water to see, okay, what new things can we do that also incorporate some of the good stuff that we're going to keep. The rest we're going to dump, we're going to let go of. And in another podcast that I just did about the South Node and the North Node moving into Aquarius, South Node moving into Leo at the end of July of 2026 and staying around for about a year and a half, that the South Node going through Leo is about letting go of the ego and letting go of seeing from your perspective and getting freaked out because you want to do things and you can't do them. And instead realizing there's other people, if you drop some of the ego that's standing in your way, that there are other people that you can work with, and it will also open your heart. So yeah, that's the good news about Saturn and Aries, is learn to be more strategic. Think about, okay, if I'm going to spend this money, if I'm going to do this, or if I'm going to do that, how do I see it in the future playing out? And that's a great way to work when you're doing some sort of plan to change your life, is look at the ways it could turn out in a great way and the ways that it could turn out not so good, and what you would do if it turned out not so good, that you realize you should apply to the plan. So that's my thought on Saturn and Aries. It's going to start slowing down, which means the house it rules, the house it's traveling through in your chart, is going to feel like, oh, I've been going so fast getting things done, and now I'm slowing down. Well, then you go through and sort the papers. I'm actually working on a memoir, which I've been working on for about a year. Turns out I probably have 5. At least that's what my classmates are telling me. And it's a lot. A lot has been coming out, lots of painful things as well as wonderful things about my life as an astrologer, how I became one. And I don't know if I'll ever finish it. I've got a plan to finish it. When, I don't know. But the sorting out is great when Mercury's a retrograde or when Saturn is retrograde. This is a good time to do sorting out when planets are retrograde. Pluto went retrograde in May, I believe it was. Yeah, May 6th. It's 5 Aquarius, 30 minutes. It's going to go back to 3 degrees Aquarius and go direct around October 15th at 3 Aquarius, 4 minutes. Pluto rules what in your chart? What house in your chart? Where is it traveling through your chart? Incorporate the house that it rules with where it's retrograde in your chart, and that'll give you an answer onto what to find, what to look for, what to research, how to be a detective in that area of your life, and to make choices that make you somewhat vulnerable. But they're the right choices. They're true and they're from the heart. That's Pluto energy. I find that Pluto is the god of choice because he's the god of power. Hades in Greek is hidden. Hades, not seen. That's the Greek word for Pluto. The Roman word is Pluto. Plutos is wealth. The underworld is where all the gold is buried. And so whenever Pluto goes retrograde, it's an opportunity to dig through your gold, wherever that is in your chart, and incorporate the house that it rules. And so when it is going direct, and then when it catches up with itself sometime in the spring of 2027, where it hits its shadow position, you're dressed for the party. One of my favorite sayings. So with that, a little bit more insight into what's happening with these crazy, crazy planets, all trying to move forward, going back, going forward, going back. It's almost like learning how to drive a stick shift. If anybody's ever learned it, it's a good exercise because you have to always remember when you shift gears to hit that clutch. If you don't hit the clutch, you're jumping all over the road. And eventually what happens, and it's a fun way to drive, actually, eventually what happens, you get a very smooth transition between the clutch and shifting the gears, and you can really feel the machine underneath you as opposed to when it's automatic. And that's what's happening with all these planets going in, going out, being at the beginning, being at the end. And there's so much more, and we'll be talking about those as well. But just think that you're learning how to drive a cosmic clutch to get to the next level. And with that said, have a great week. This is Georgia Stathis at starcycles.com. And if you want to do more research, go to alexandriaibase.org, which is our free research website. We are now rebuilding the website, but you can go into the catalog, which is a library search engine, put in the titles or the subjects of what you're looking for, and whatever we've listed, it will come up to show you where you can find your information. We also have special collections where we're collecting journals, magazines, old articles, research papers of astrologers who would like to give this in perpetuity to our foundation, where you can do a little research there as well. But when we get to UAC, I'm hoping we have a brand new, very easy to maneuver website at alexandriaibase.org. And if you feel compelled, we would love to get a donation from you so we can keep doing the good work. Thank you. Bye.